Dr. Dana Corriel is a board-certified internist and founder of SoMeDocs, Doctors on Social Media, and the Health Expert Hub. Dana earned the title of Top 10 Internist to Follow on Twitter in 2018 by Medical Economics, and Top 20 Social Media Physician Influencers by Medscape in 2019. She's appeared in major publications, including the LA Times, Gastro and Endo News, MD Magazine, the Boston Globe, HuffPost, Medscape, and EP News, and served as a guest faculty at conferences, including a yearly guest faculty spot at the Harvard Healthcare Writers Conference. She now hosts summits for healthcare professional development through her SoMeDocs. Dr. Corriel's specialty in physician branding, online strategy, and unique content creation and marketing. She curates and produces all resources offered through SoMeDocs, and her dream is not only to inspire professionals to innovate by thinking outside the box, but to play an instrumental role in facilitating connections between health experts and the general public. And she'd love to leave a positive impact or dent, however small, in healthcare. I think she's already done that, so maybe it's about making an even bigger dent, I guess. Dana, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk. This is my bread and butter. I love off the cuff things. So I love not having a script and just kind of answering people's questions and taking conversations where they need to go. Partly because I've had so much experience with digital innovation that I really love so many aspects of the digital space that is actually still untapped as physicians, and that I think that we can tap. So Paul, is there a direction you want me to go? Do you want me to maybe just introduce myself and give some of my timeline?
Yeah, give some of the nuance to some of the overview that I gave and what you think is important.
Sure. So I am a middle-aged practicing I was a practicing internist until about almost 2 years ago now, when I guess my story sort of begins with a break. I took a break from medicine when I was having my third child, and the break turned out to be very different than how I had expected it to be. I thought that I was going to take a break to connect with my children, who I had not, in my mind, had not sufficiently connected with, because I had my first child when I was an intern, and my husband and I are both physicians. But life is interesting. And it turned out that it really wasn't me insufficiently connecting with my child. I think part of it was me insufficiently connecting with myself. Yada, yada, yada. I learned so many new things about myself, and that short little break turned into a much longer break than I had anticipated. And before I knew it, it was 3 years away from clinical practice, which is pretty substantial, just considering that I had gone straight through and had only known medicine and was suddenly just overwhelmed by the fact that there's a world out there and that I actually loved things in it and was possessive of skills that I just never knew I had. So I went back into medicine, but vowed to never leave back these new skills that I had discovered. And that partly involved dabbling online. In my time away, I started to make friends in the neighborhood. I had never made neighborhood friends because I always moved all my life. I always studied to be a doctor, and you don't have time for those kinds of things. So I started to develop friendships, and I started to realize that people from my community were actually influenced increasingly by the online world. And when this was happening, it was many years ago, and doctors weren't online. It was shunned. And I wasn't practicing, so I decided to just kind of put myself right in there, and I opened up my own blog, and I was blogging for fun, and I got eye rolls, and I got people judging me, and I persisted and I continued. And then when I went back to practicing medicine, I decided that I would somehow find a way to blog as a physician and to just creatively connect with patients in a way that they hadn't been connected with before, because the online world was, again, not tapped into by physicians. So that was the initial part of it. And I basically just kept writing and practicing and creating things that could be soaked up by patients. And again, at the time, this wasn't a thing. And before I knew it, I was really foreseeing a future where, like, how could this not be where the future is for doctors? Even if we're absent from social media and from the digital world right now, that doesn't mean that in 10 years we're going to be absent from it. And I recognize that if the whole world is now connecting online, but there's no doctors in it, then we are missing in that equation. And we are a big factor that's missing, because what I was seeing is pseudoscience, and I was seeing more and more patients coming into me and me having to waste my time convincing them that what they had read was not correct out of an already shrinking appointment time. I was also very disillusioned with healthcare. As an internist, I mean, I don't think that that's a surprise to any of you. I was working for a system. I don't need to go over all the reasons why I was disillusioned, but it's all the usual reasons. It's the fact that we're no longer in control. We are also no longer respected. And it really, it burns you out. It causes moral injury, whatever term you want to use, it is affecting us. And so I practiced for a while, and then I decided to, so then I opened up SoMe. I decided that what I had done could be done by all the doctors in the world. And it did not just have to be me. In fact, I felt like I was a minuscule part of this like gigantic possibility if we got more doctors to be online. And so I opened up, so I dabbled a little bit in the existing groups that were there on Facebook, where doctors I thought could connect, but I realized very quickly that those groups were not always what they seemed. And I was very frustrated because I saw a lot of innovation that could be promoted and facilitated. I saw that all not happen. And so I created my own space, and that was SoMe Docs. That was doctors on social media. And I really I thought I was giving it a very general name to just insinuate that if you're a doctor and you're on social media, this was a great space to connect with and network. But ultimately, the goal was to get everybody not only connected, but get them to understand what I just spoke about, which is that like wave of the future, the way to connect with people is going to be through the digital world, even though we had been trained to connect with humans behind closed doors, face to face. And that's what SoMe Docs was about. And through the years, we've gone through so many iterations and we've been tweaked so much. But the current iteration I'm so proud of is a website hub that I think just serves to showcase physicians and doctors that are doing things outside the box, that don't necessarily just think of themselves as a doctor that heals someone in a clinical setting, but understands the power of marketing and of marketing their expertise and their intellectual property, and being able to advance your career in more ways than you could ever imagine. And some of those maybe are obvious to those of you that are listening to me, and some of you probably can't even imagine all the things that can happen to you when you start to think about putting yourself out there and your thoughts and what you're good at. And the beautiful thing is that everyone who's not a doctor is already doing it. Everyone is inventing themselves online. And yet here we are with advanced degrees, and we're struggling to be seen online. And to me, that's part of the solution that SoMe Docs was trying to offer, was like to create the space where we can highlight people that have already been educated, so that the public doesn't have to wonder, well, how can this person say this, or what experience does this person have? Well, I have a medical degree, so yeah, I can say that. So that's the history in a nutshell. I I love digital creations. I've, in the past few years, learned to not just build websites, but to perfect them. User experience is extremely important for me. Little secret, I worked as a teenager at Disneyland, and some of you may or may not know that the Disneyland brand is very big on the guest experience. They don't call them customers, they call them guests. And they have many, many rules that have stuck with me that really always put their guests first and always consider the feelings of their guests. And I always envisioned that healthcare should be run in that way as well. And in fact, when I practiced, I always wanted my office to run in a way that was so loving to the patient that the patient felt it was almost like a spa experience, even without seeing me. But again, that's where the hurdles come in of, I'm not actually in charge of how my office is run, the system's in charge. And so my belief is that we are absolutely increasingly digital, and the faster a physician recognizes that the digital space is capable of promoting their name, their career, opening up opportunities, the faster they're going to increase their worth in real life as their worth in the online space increases. So I think right now there's a million ways I can go. I'll stop, and then maybe someone can either ask a question about what I'm doing or something that interests them, or, I can answer something from their own perspective. And before I actually do that, just really quickly, so I just tell you some of the things I've done, maybe that isn't there. Being able to build an online brand for myself as a consultant, even as a digital consultant, has been incredible. I've had such amazing opportunities thrown my way to write for big publications that have paid me to write for them, right? So that's in and of itself really cool, because I've been able to make money writing an article, doing something I love. I've been able to I've been courted for boards for startups. I recently joined a board of advisor of a very large company that recognized my skills and my potential, in that they want me to help steer the ship. And I've also been courted by a VC company that wants me to help with the consulting there. But those are just some of the things that I've done. I've had speaking invitations where I've been paid to speak. And interestingly, I actually nowadays say no to a lot of invitations, because things I don't have time for everything. But it feels good to be able, it's sad to me, because I am an altruistic person and I want to be there for everybody. Most of us are like that when we go into medicine, but at the end of the day, you can't say yes to everybody, and you have to really just decide what can really help people and what can really help the project that I'm focusing on right now. So I think there's questions in the chat, or if Jeff wants.
Thanks so much for that introduction and overview. And I think some of you keep highlighting, that it sounds like when people do what they want to do, they can bring that message, that knowledge, that intellectual property to a much bigger audience through the social media platform. And it's also, a huge way that our patients are, communicating and getting information anyways.
Yeah, in fact, the latest thing I'm saying to people, so that they can start to at least conceptualize it, the way that I look at the digital world, is that it's called social media, but when you stop thinking about it as social and think about it as media, that's when you are going to take on a much more healthy outlook on how the digital world can help you. I think that as we progress as a society in social media, I think there's actually a lot of dangers to being in it. I always start my lectures by saying that social media is a double-edged sword, and I actually personally hate it. I wish it was never invented, but it's here and it's here to stay. So we may as well, especially as physicians and the leaders of people's health, we may as well learn how to use it, realize what's happening on it, and then help to take it in the right direction, because there is a lot of bad stuff happening on social media and manipulation. And even in doctor circles, I see things that I am not happy are happening. So we have to really be careful, and we have to always remember that it's media, and that, I mean, and this is terrible to say, especially to coaches, but people aren't your friends on social media. They are professional contacts. Your friends are your friends in real life, who know you and who forgive you and who know that you are a human and you could make mistakes. And if you say something, you don't get blasted as you do actually in what happens in nowadays in social media.
That's a good point. And I'll give you a little bit of choice, because you mentioned one thing, but there is a question about what are some various ways that physicians you work with are using social media to benefit their careers. But I also will let you kind of preface it if you think that the don'ts should go first, or you want to take that question. Because you said you often start your presentations with kind of the cautions or things not to do.
I don't necessarily start with the don'ts. I just start by making sure that an audience understands that I have not chosen to enter social media because I love it as an entity. I do think there are positives to it. I think it so easily connects us. I think it could promote our careers. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that I am not someone that believes that overall social media is a good thing, but I am someone who is a believer in adapting yourself to an innovation that is there anyway, and that you cannot get rid of. Like I cannot put on my blinders and pretend like my community is not being influenced or affected by social media. And I am an intelligent person who can curate both my presence and my growth on social media in a way that works for me. And that's something that's really important to say to doctors, because I think that doctors don't get trained in PR and don't get trained in marketing, and don't realize sometimes that the things that they say or do on social media can have repercussions, sometimes beyond the digital face. And so, for example, if you say something and you think it's bad and you erase it, your words can have been screenshot and taken out of context, and your employer can take out the repercussions on you with you just thinking that you erased it, right? Like in real life, that would never happen. If you said something that maybe you regretted, you would apologize for it. You probably, if there were like 2 people in the room, it would usually never leave. Whereas if you tweet it out and you've got the 17,000 followers and like and understand, like I said, that followers doesn't mean people love you. Quite the contrary. If you think about it, a lot of times your followers want to see you sometimes want to see you trip up, and they want to see you, doing things, or maybe they're argumentative. Like, again, it's a completely different world, and we communicate completely differently on social media. And that's because we are not friends. We are professional contacts, and your professional contact is not going to forgive you like a family or a friend is going to forgive you. So I'm going to talk quickly about what the various ways physicians have for benefiting their careers, because there's so many ways. And I basically brainstorm through those ways and then try to create, using my skills to create resources on SoMeDocs, on doctorsonsocialmedia.com, to have doctors like use us to do it better. So right off the bat, what I'm thinking of, for example, are courses. So people in the world are building courses for years already, and they don't think twice. They just build a course. You want to teach someone how to boil pasta. You want to teach someone how to cook this thing. You want to teach someone how to be happy. And yet doctors really aren't doing that. Now, we have, of course, a lot more barriers to building something like a course, of course. We've got the legalities that we have to think of, and we have all kinds of different things that differ. But at the end of the day, who better to build a course, especially when it teaches someone about health, than medical degreed individuals? So for me, that makes no sense. And I am trying to actually fuel that fire and get more doctors out there building courses. And to me, a course is just packaged up intellectual property, right? Like a visit that I have with a patient to speak about how they can decrease the symptoms of sleep apnea, or how they can decrease their gastroesophageal reflux disease, can easily be packaged up, right? I spend that time with the patient. Why can't I spend that time with a video screen, talk about the same things, have different chapters, right? Different ways of approaching reflux, let's say, and then package it up into a curated course. And then I could either have it, if I have a private practice, I could either have it as a resource when someone says that they don't feel well and they have reflux, or if I am an entrepreneur, I can say, well, I want to place a monetary value on this, and you can sell it. You don't have to sell your course for $1,000. You could sell it for $20, right? As a resource, in the same way that a reflex medication is sold for a lot of money too. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying that what I've created is worthy of a monetary value. And then to me, a course is just the start. I mean, I picture our space. I picture a physician at let me backtrack a second, and then I'll bring in the picture of a course as a product on a shelf of a store. So let's go a few steps back. To me, I look at the digital world literally as a world, and I look at our ability to open up our individual spaces in websites, for example, or in podcasts like Jeff does, right? Whatever it is that can display your product like a real store does, you're just basically opening up a store online where it's the Jeff show, or it's the Dr. Corriel, I'd call it a show, but it's the Dr. Corriel space. And I actually have a website called drcorriel.com. Right now, the World Wide Web is still very untapped, which means that you actually can and should stake claim to the property that should be yours, and that's your name, right? So I own Dr. Corriel, and I also own DanaCorriel.com. My son owns his name. And to me, that space then is a barren land that you own, that you can then build your website on. So you can kind of picture it like a real world equivalent to make it easier for you. So you'd buy the land in the URL in the drcorriel.com, then you build the website by building that store. And it doesn't have to be a store. I don't want you to think of it like a store where you're actually selling something. It could be a portfolio for you. Like, it could literally just be a space that houses what you're good at, because you're hoping that a business or a conference or a podcast or whatever is going to have their eyes land on your store where you have your intellectual property and say, whoa, my project can use this person in my X, Y, and Z, in my business. In the same way that, for example, that very big company found me and then reached out to me and said, we really want your expertise on our board. They would not have found me if I was a silent physician that was in my exam room treating patients silently for the system. They just wouldn't. And that's the point, is that it's media. So like, start building your stores. So to me, that store is just a space virtually that houses your intellectual property. So a course would just be one product on the shelf of your store. So imagine a store that is that sells t-shirts and sells other things for people, right? They have a section on t-shirts, but they also have a section with pants and another section with hats. Your course on reflux disease could be just one product in your shelves. And so if you enjoy recording yourself teaching and you put a monetary value to it, let's say each course is $100 and making it is easy for you, because nowadays, by the way, like it's so easy to make a course and it's so easy to build content. I build content very quickly, and so can you. It takes a while to learn, but when you learn it, it becomes very easy. That shelf starts to fill up with your brand, with your branded things, with your reflux course, or with your sleep apnea course, or with your a million other courses. And the beauty of it is that we are not just any Joe Schmo. We are all physicians that have had so much experience in life. We actually know so much more than the people that are actually building courses out there. Now, there's amazing people, there's masterclass where but they take celebrities and they take one thing that the celebrity is good at and they build a course out of it. But we are in charge of our own destiny, and we can actually build a course for ourselves. But a course is just one thing you can build. You can build videos. You can build a YouTube channel that can get monetized. Again, anything that you build can be used to increase your thought leadership in order to increase the chances that opportunities come your way. I would never have been asked to come be a guest faculty member at the Harvard Writing Conference if I hadn't put myself out there. I was a Joe Schmo physician. I graduated from Sackler University in Tel Aviv. I did my residency at Albert Einstein here in New York. Like there's really, again, maybe some people that's impressive, but for me, it doesn't, I'm kind of a Joe Schmo physician, but I never would have imagined that I would have had such an incredible opportunity thrown my way had it not been for me putting myself out there and showcasing my skills, packaging them up in a way that I described to you. I'm going to stop
Dana,
momentarily because I see a question.
That's awesome. So let me go ahead and actually let Muibat unmute herself and feel free to share her question.
Sure. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thanks so much.
My question is mainly about time management. My interests in social media are mainly outside of being a surgeon and more about, I'm kind of into interior design and things like that, which is an incredibly crowded space. But that being said, I feel like it's more and more competitive in terms of, there's every time I feel like I get the hang of something, then there's some new thing that comes out that everybody's doing. So how do you keep abreast of that? And how do you make enough time to make that type of content?
Okay, love it. First of all, I love interior design. In fact, design is one of my favorite things in the world. I'm good at design and I love design. So I get you. And it's a good point to say, because actually I work with physicians who are dabbling in medical topics. And I actually work with a lot of physicians that are doing things outside of medicine. There's physicians that are trying to be financial, the financial, master of doctors, right? Or there's doctors that are doing that want to be like the real estate gods of the doctors. And there's also doctors that are doing, design and cookies and this and that. It doesn't really matter what you do. To me, the point is just that we are all unified by the fact that we have earned medical degrees. And I think, and I might still be wrong, but I think that's interesting to the rest of the world. I think the rest of the world does find a fascination with doctors that are doing different. And that came about for me too, that I found that I had so many skills and other things, and yet I pursued medicine. So I think that you pursuing something in the interior design field is amazing because of so many reasons. First of all, it can just be an outlet for you. And in and of itself, that can serve as a stress reliever. And even if it takes you nowhere, it sounds to me like you are still a surgeon. And so awesome. If you look at it that way and you kind of just grow it on the side, and then if something comes of it, great. And if something doesn't come of it, fine, because I'm still doing surgery and earning a living doing that, but I'm like taking out all of my pent up energy on this side gig that I am loving. Now, for the sake of brevity, I'll move on to your question about how do you do it in terms of time management, because that is a fantastic question. Doctors just don't have time these days. I worked part-time when I went back into medicine. If I was working full-time, I would 100% not have time to build online. And so you need guidance as to how to build. And I will give you a little bit of that now, just as like a quickie. But you need guidance because it is very easy to become overwhelmed. It's also very easy to become distracted by brands that are successful because it's intimidating for us. First of all, we're perfectionists, we're type A. So to see someone else succeed when we're like, well, I want to do that. It's hard for us because we have done that. We've earned medical degrees. Like who else, right? How many of us actually have medical degrees in the world? Not a lot. But an interior design is different because someone can become an interior designer. They don't need a medical degree. So you do truly have to like swallow that. It's a hard pill to swallow, but is the truth is that things online, you don't need a medical degree to be an expert online. And that's what I think sets us apart, that I'm trying to build a space to like elevate doctors, because that does set us apart from the rest of the world, is that we actually have freaking earned degrees. So in terms of time management, what I would say to you, and it sounds to me like you're very much in the beginning phases, is that I would first dabble, I would look around, I would see what you want to do. When you're ready, I would probably consider taking out that quote real estate property, which means like buy some lands, like some space online that's yours, and then build something or have someone, listen, we can outsource, we're doctors, like we can afford outsourcing. Have someone quickly whip up. It doesn't have to be fancy if you're just experimenting. I started out with like very, minimal things. You build the space, you build the backbone, and then you decide what you want to experiment with. So for example, and just so that you understand, that store, that website will be yours. Social media, literally you own it. Social media is not something that you own. What it is they're just satellites where you can advertise. That's all social media is the website is going to be 100% you, meaning you're going to make all the rules and you're the boss for your website. Whereas social media, like you're in an Instagram account you take out, a LinkedIn account you take out, a Twitter account, a Facebook account, YouTube, etc. Those you own your account, but you're kind of subleasing space in someone else's hotel. Like in Facebook, it's Mark Zuckerberg's mall. You're just subleasing space for free, and you're just conforming to his rules because believe me, he's making money off of you, but you're still using it to your benefit. But the way that we should all be thinking about it is that, fine, I'm subleasing free space in these free social media satellites. And my goal is to ultimately to drive traffic to my space, to my store, for more reasons than just the face value reasons. For the reason that there you're going to actually collect interest. People that care about you on your website can be collected in the form of an email, for example, and you will always be able to connect with them. Whereas people on Mark Zuckerberg's space, and I could tell you from firsthand, you're always subject to his rules. So I spent years growing Facebook groups that were huge without trying. I had 5,000 people in my group. I just closed it because I was so fed up with having put so much energy and bringing doctors in because they were actually interested in what I was doing. but nobody saw my posts because apparently you have to pay Mark Zuckerberg, and I don't know how much, so it's not transparent. Point is that my advice to you is that as a beginner, you should look around. You should start to write down some of your goals, but you don't have to have goals. I don't know you, and I do really well on one-on-one like coaching. So if I knew the answers, I could guide you. But if you still don't know what you're doing with the interior design, maybe you've got like let me give you an example. Maybe you have got 200 photos of spaces that you've interior designed. Like that, I would give different instructions to that person than I would give to someone who is completely starting from scratch and is like, I like interior design. What should I do? Because there's so many directions that you can go online. Like if you had 200 photos of interior design projects you did, my best advice would be to build a ridiculously beautiful portfolio on your own website, and then to slowly sprinkle it on the social media platforms, in your spaces on the social media platforms, in order to get people to start recognizing you as having talent in interior design, and ultimately driving people back into that website where you can build as you go. So maybe a year from now, you will have a little space on that website where it's not just a portfolio, but now people can actually hire you as their consultant. And to be honest with you, like there's something so interesting about being a physician and an interior designer. I saw something in my community Facebook group the other day about someone that was building interior design spaces for, I don't know if it was for kids with ADHD, but it was like calm spaces. That was her like shtick. And so that in and of itself is great branding, because now you are specifically like, you're not just an interior designer. And that sets you apart from the 3 million other interior designers in that you're saying, well, I'm actually building interior design space that has health value to it. And guess what? You've got a medical degree. So like, if you can show in a portfolio that you have amazing taste, and then you've got that medical degree shining in the background, then I would be convinced to hire you if I was looking to build even like a space in the hospital that was like a safe space for children to play in, etc. So it's all part of building your plan as you're building your property on digital space in order to suit you and your needs.
Other questions from anyone? There's some comments in the chat, but I just wanted to see if anyone else wanted to pose another live question.
And while they're thinking, and unless someone raises their hand, it was posed to me about the time. I think I would never say it's not time consuming. It is actually ridiculously time consuming. So what you need to do is have a plan in place that optimizes, that maximizes your effort in the least amount of time you have to spend on building. And that involves things like what's called batching and what's called like creating content that could be recycled. And so that's why, to me, the answer is actually to build one space that's yours, because it's always going to be yours and no one can take it away from you. And then from there, like plucking out little pieces of it that can be spread across social media to give people almost like a little flavor. I call it like the Costco, like smorgasbord, you know, the people that sit there with like their little flavies that we love to go to Costco for. That's what you're going to look at social media as, is that you are giving people on LinkedIn a little taste of who you are, a little flavoring, so that they go in and they buy your stew because they tasted a little bite of your stew and they're like, this is yummy stew. I'm going to go visit her stew shop and buy some more stew. Life is about marketing. All of life is about marketing. Literally, like me talking to my child earlier and convincing him to do X, Y, and Z is me marketing to my child. I really do believe every human interaction is about marketing. So when we learn to perfect our communication and the way in which we market what we ultimately want, you can do some really incredible things.
Muhibat, anything to follow up on kind of where you were asking, any other question that followed up on sort of the trying not to be overwhelmed by social media as you leverage this idea that we really do have a lot of value, and whether you're doing it to provide joy and fun for yourself, or whether you're doing it to entrepreneur, there's still, you know, some balance as to how you integrate that with a busy clinical career. What other things kind of follow for you?
Yeah, my best advice, honestly, is that you need to and it takes brainstorming to do this, but you need to regularly like go back and brainstorm through what you're doing, what's taking up your time, and what do you love to do. At the end of the day, if you are busy doing X, Y, and Z, and you identify that doing X really purely gives you joy, then doing it isn't work. And so you should focus more on doing X. And that's something that's really important on social media, is even if you do kind of take my advice and build your own space on your own website, there's a million different ways to grow a website. And there's actually a million different ways to showcase what you're good at on your website. So it's really important to explore and experiment and kind of learn what are your options, and then what do you love to do? Because listen, if you don't like to talk, then a podcast is going to be torture for you. And if you don't like to post photos, then Instagram isn't the place for you. And likewise on Twitter, right? If you don't like to say things in 280 characters and you're not comfortable with the milieu of Twitter, because Twitter is totally different than other spaces, they're all different, then it's not going to give you joy, and it's going to be more work than anything. So regularly checking yourself and making sure that what you're doing equates to you loving what you're doing is a must. I live and breathe content creating, and it's literally my passion. One of the things I'm doing on SoMeDocs is building video series, because I love it. I love hearing people talk and editing. And so I'm doing a series with Samuel Shem, The House of God. That's another thing I was able to do. I'm doing a season 2, and he's incredible. And I would never be someone who literally is regularly in touch with someone whose book I read in medical school. But I'm doing it because he's recognized that I have skills that he needs, because even he, right? So that's another example to kind of make us feel good, is that Samuel Shem is a medical icon. He is really one of the most well-known authors in medical history, in the history of medicine. And yet he needs help with marketing. He is writing new books. He's got his 4th one coming out, and it's he doesn't know how to work the digital space. And so don't look at what other people did and think that you can't do it. I think that as long as you figure out how to infuse your own space and your own brand with its own really cool flavor, then people are going to eventually come to you as well, and take you up on whatever it is that you're looking to do. And again, I'm kind of approaching this as an entrepreneur, which is how everybody actually should be approaching it, because growth is like growth of a business. It's super different to grow as an entrepreneur than it has been to grow as a doctor. I've learned so much over the last few years. Entrepreneurs constantly make mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas in medicine, I never was allowed to make a mistake because someone's life was in my hands. So it's been an incredibly like interesting journey to grow online, knowing that I could make a million mistakes, and that's not only okay, but that's good because I'm actually getting stronger because I can like pull back on this arm and maybe grow this arm. And then I can actually like experiment with 30 different arms without having to have like a research team approve it or say that it's like have the FDA say, okay, I can do my own experiments and I can pull back whenever I want. And I can focus on the arms that are not only successful, but are also making me happy, which is a great equation.